Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, coming to you live from Hong Kong at SmartCon 2024 by Chainlink. Joining us for this segment, we have Mathew Harrowing. He's co-founder of Instruxi. We're here to discuss how Web3 technologies can give Web2 businesses more control over data privacy and sovereignty. It is great to have you with us, Mathew. Welcome to TradeTalks.
Great to be here, thank you.
Let's talk about Web3, how it's enhancing Web2 and helping to scale security.
Sure, so our hypothesis is really that Web2 has issues. It has a lot of issues. We've lost a lot of privacy, and a lot of our data has gone in the wind over the last few years. And we see those issues, and we need to do something about it. Now, something that Web3 does really well is move keys around. It's great at managing cryptographic proofs. So our hypothesis, and what we've proven with our clients, is by bringing both architectures together, we can harden Web 2 using Web 3 principles.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, when you think about data sovereignty and privacy, to your point earlier, within the Web 2 ecosystem, you have regulations like GDPR. It's not something nice to have, it's something that you have to comply with. How does Instruxi's data mesh leverage Web 3 technologies to give Web 2 the ability to do this more efficiently?
So within Web 3, we have this concept of a public and private key pair. Now, that means that really you own whatever is associated with your key pair. You control your keys. Now, we can, in Web 3, that's typically used for holding a wallet and holding cryptocurrency within a wallet and being able to do things. Now, in a Web 2 world, we can use the same principles and associate data and databases under a public and private key pair. So one of the big issues in Web 2 is that when we want to try and scale data, we make copies of it. And then once we make a copy of it, we create risk. So if I want to report across 3 or 4 databases, I typically create another database. When we sat back and we thought, well, the problem isn't the data, the problem is you. I just need to give you, and verify that it is you, an ability to access the data and control the data. And that's why we launched our Instruxi Mesh ID with Clear yesterday, so we could verify you and assign you permissions over Web 2 and Web 3 architecture. So by decentralizing how you access Web 2, under a public and private key pair, we create a cryptographic framework upon which to nest Web 2 applications.
Yeah, it's interesting, data begets data, right, with these emerging technologies. So now you start thinking about new revenue models and, new types of products that are going to be derived through all this data that's being created. I mean, our conversation can look very different next year from now, especially when you think about what it can do with tokenization. How do you see that evolving?
There's several ways. Back in 2017, I believe, Ernst & Young created this amazing, they published this amazing paper about the commercialization and valuation of national health data in the UK. And they were able to create a standard and a framework about how to value data as an intangible asset. Now, which is wonderful, but it creates all the incentive programs the wrong way. It creates incentive programs for everyone with data to now figure a way of commercializing it. Now, we want to be a part of that. We want to be able to provide an informed consent over how that data is used. So, for instance, I'm happy for my genome to be used for medical research, but not for bioterrorism, which I know, it could be used. So number one is, how do we ethically create frameworks that can commercialize data? Web 3 gives us an ability to govern data no matter where it is through an intent to consent framework. On top of that, as we see new type of DeFi structures created, we've got an ability to blend TradFi and DeFi to create whole new frameworks of value. So DeFi is its own ecosystem, it generates value. TradFi is its own ecosystem, it generates value. We're bringing together hundreds of millions of dollars of new assets on chain that are completely new financial instruments that no one has seen before, that are the intersection between both worlds, generating more yield because we're using yield on both sides. to benefit either side.
Which is interesting because as the space matures and the conversations evolve, you're starting to hear more about integration and user experience, which I take as an encouraging sign. However, some pushback here, regulatory pressures continue to grow. There's multiple jurisdictions, particularly if you're operating on a global basis. When it comes to improving compliance, reducing risk, decentralized data governance, in the Web 2 world, we're still trying to figure that out, right? Where if there's some sort of standardization there, what are some of those challenges? What's your outlook as it relates to that?
So here's the beauty of Chainlink. So Chainlink is a toolbox that gives us lots of tools to be able to architect the new world that we're looking for. What Chainlink and what our platform does, the Instruxi data mesh, is enable you to link traditional Web 2 systems with Web 3 ecosystems, so I can create a golden thread from the general ledger to the treasury management system on chain and back again, and I can do my reconciliations with a single SQL query. So in terms of regulation, I can keep on top of my reporting, I can give near live reporting, I can reconcile across systems. More importantly, I'm not copying data. I can put in frameworks that enable me to push queries to the data, so my data is staying under my control, and I've decentralized the policies about how you access data, so you're coming over the top, and I know that only you can access the data for the intent and for the period that I give you the access for. So we're giving more control, more governance, more security to be able to help businesses comply with data.
So within the existing framework.
Within the existing, and using your existing infrastructure. We're not asking anyone to rip out Web 2.
Well, I mean, you also don't want to become siloed again.
And interestingly, that from the last 20 years, our technologies, when we've sold new technologies, it's really about selling the same technology just slightly better. This is a whole new way about thinking about infrastructure, and what Chainlink gives us is the ability to use these new toolkits and re-architecture our existing infrastructure to make it work better.
Right. So you're thinking about security, scalability, transparency, interoperability. I mean, that really is the next...
File sharing, secure file sharing, secure privacy. So we've got one client, Humanity, that has used our kit to create the first HIPAA-compliant file sharing and messaging framework, no backdoors, multiple levels of privacy. This is a secure messaging framework that they feel that they're giving back power to people to have privacy on how their information is shared.
How do you see the Web 2 incumbents working with this newer technology? As their models are certainly going to change. What have you been saying?
Yeah, well, I think the problem we've had is Web 3 is we've sat there and gone, we're special, come here.
Right.
And the Web 2 world has gone, well, actually, you're not that special. You're just a key management, framework. And what we're seeing now is hybrid architectures. So we need to take the power of Web 2. Web 3 doesn't scale data on its own. It's not great at managing data. It's not what it's designed for. Web 2 is not great at key management. We're putting the keys by the data. We have multiple systems. It doesn't do cross-system querying very well. When we have to do querying across system, like if you've got SAP, Oracle, or JD Edwards, I have to create another system in order to look at a consolidated report. Now, with Web 3 and Web 2, we get the best of data scaling and security and decentralized governance mashed together, tied to the verified user of you, giving you the power and permissions to be able to access all of the information within this ecosystem. We call it the data mesh. Data mesh is a new type of architecture where the data owners control the data, we mesh over the top of it, and we provide access to the data through the mesh.
And that's where the security comes in, because you're not replicating the data
We're
elsewhere,
not replicating
or
data,
sending it elsewhere.
And we don't have, in the situation SAP and JD was each one you're represented in each one with different policies. We need to get rid of that nonsense. We need to go to a single ID, verified ID, which is why we partnered with Clear, a decentralized verified ID with decentralized and verified but private policies governed universally, so we don't have this constant copying of permissions and protocols and admin that's needed to manage just you and what you can access and where you can access it.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how this is evolving.
It's kind of exciting,
It really
isn't it?
is. We are in the thick of it.
We're just at the beginning.
Yeah.
We've got some great clients that are creating amazing new types of architectures with our stack. I mean, we've got new financial instruments coming on. We've got an insurance company, Iris Insurance Tech, that's creating an insurance data market. that doing things that's never been done before. True
I'm excited about the
federated.
cybersecurity component of it,
Yep.
right? I mean, you know the risks that are associated. There are multiple vendors, and you're sending your data, kind of all over the place. The vulnerabilities and the exposure appears to be limited with this type of architecture.
In terms of the legacy architecture, yes.
Right.
Now, by combining Web3,
Right.
then we're able to. So we have something called Mesh SQL. So effectively, we create a catalog of the data landscape. We try and mitigate any backdoors in,
Right.
and then that gives us the ability to federate queries across the framework, so we can push the query into the data. Think of it like you've got an embassy and the data has a passport, and so there are certain elements of data that you allow to be transferred, you allow to be queried. So think that each data system has its own embassy, and that the Instruxi data mesh is able to orchestrate through the governance layer your ability to access data you should be able to access, no matter where it is, whether in Web 2 or Web 3.
Yeah, I like that expression, federating it. Makes sense. All right.
It's the future.
It really is. Appreciate the insight, Matthew. Thanks for joining us on Trade
Thank
Talks.
you.
And thanks for joining me from SmartCon. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.